Welcome to Nurture the Soul. I am your host today, the Reverend Dr. Sarah Lund, Minister for Disabilities and Mental Health Justice with the national setting of the United Church of Christ. I also serve as the Senior Pastor of First Congregational UCC of Indianapolis. We are a WISE church, welcoming, inclusive, supportive, engaged for mental health. We are part of the Indiana-Kentucky Conference, a WISE conference in the UCC. Nurture the Soul is a weekly webinar that seeks to share practical and educational, innovative, and formational resources to engage with the critical topics of our time for all of our local churches and faith practitioners. We are always searching for ways to produce opportunities to engage you, the beloved community, in order to focus on care and education for all of God's people. From cultural and community organizing to congregational leadership, from worship and theology to resourcing small and rural churches, from ministry with youth and children to a wide range of justice issues, we seek to feature guest artists, authors, and key leaders. Nurture the Soul stays current to how the gospel is alive in this time. We hope that this is a space for connection, community, and nurture. For together we can bring our church, our community, and the world towards the world that God imagines for all of us. Join us every Thursday at 3:30 Eastern Standard Time for Nurture the Soul. And from time to time, look for our special offerings. You can find a full list of upcoming digital program offerings at ucc.org/events or any of our social media platforms. Friends, if this conversation moves you, if what's offered here helps to enhance your ministry or your soul, please consider donating to the annual fund of the United Church of Christ by texting UCC to 41444. Your prayerful and financial support helps programs like this in the essential work of the United Church of Christ. Beloved, thank you for supporting us, and thank you for being with us today. This webinar, the UCC and the mental health journey, it's the wise thing to do, celebrates the leadership and ministry of the United Church of Christ Mental Health Network, a covenant partner of the national setting of the United Church of Christ. This topic is important, and we want to share that the webinar today includes conversations and stories on difficult subject matter, including stories about suicide loss. The United Church of Christ is committed to working with you to end the stigma and shame by breaking the silence and talking about mental health and mental health symptoms and diagnosis and all the realities that sometimes tragically lead to suicide. And so we encourage you to be mindful about your own mental health, to take care of your own well-being, be gentle with yourself. Please know that there are resources to help you. You are not alone. 988 is a crisis text line and a phone number that you and others can call for crisis emotional support. We are here. We are here to support you, to care for you, to offer guidance, resources, and partnership. It is my absolute joy and honor to introduce you to our distinguished guests for Nurture the Soul. Today, you will meet leaders in the UCC mental health movement for mental health justice for all. We have with us today Bishop Dr. Allison Abrams, Senior Pastor of Empowerment Liberation Cathedral in Maryland, President of the United Church of Christ Mental Health Network Board, and their church is in the process of becoming WISE, welcoming, inclusive, supportive, and engaged. We also have Abby Chronister. She is the vice chair of the Mental Health Network. She is a member in discernment with the United Church of Christ, and her home church is First Congregational UCC in Waterloo, Iowa. We also have Dr. Vicki Harvey. She serves on the board as our lead team liaison for coordinating the WISE movement, and she is the Intersectionality Series coordinator. Her home church is Diamond Bar United Church of Christ in Diamond Bar, California. We also have Debbie Ringing, faith community nurse, minister for health and wellness in the Southern New England UCC conference. Her church is also becoming a WISE church for mental health, First Church of Christ in Old Saybrook, Connecticut. We also want to hold the Southern New England Conference in prayer as they're voting to become a WISE conference in the UCC. So let's get started, friends. Bishop, we want to thank you for your faithful leadership of the UCC Mental Health Network. It is my joy to introduce you to everyone here today on our Nurture the Soul webinar about mental health.
Thank you so much, Reverend Dr. Sarah Lund, for the loving, compassionate, beautiful introductions. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Bishop Dr. Allison Abrams. As you heard, I'm the president of the Mental Health Network Board of the United Church of Christ, and so excited to be the senior pastor of Empowerment Liberation Cathedral located in Maryland. I welcome you and bring you greetings on behalf of all the board members of the Mental Health Network. We're excited that you have joined us today for our UCC and the Mental Health Journey, It's the Wise Thing to Do webinar. If any of you are wondering, yes, you are in the right place at the right time. I pray that you all will have a collision with the Holy Spirit and realize that God, yes, is still speaking. God is speaking about those areas that we have not wanted to acknowledge and continually have ignored. God is still speaking about how we can be in community with one another, all of God's people, respecting our differences and honoring and showing love to all who cross our paths. God is still speaking, yes, about how we can move forward with intentionality in our spaces, about being welcoming, inclusive, supportive, and engaged. The Apostle Paul pens to us in Philippians chapter 2, verses 3 through 4, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. How can we place the needs of the most vulnerable, the most marginalized, the most misunderstood, and the outcast above our own? I came to tell you, get ready, take your seats, buckle up, everybody. We are going somewhere, and I don't want you to miss anything. Our first presenter on this journey is Dr. Vicki Harvey. Then after Dr. Harvey will be Debbie Ringen. And then after Debbie Ringen, we will have our last presenter, Abby Chronister, who is a mid in the United Church of Christ. Dr. Vicki Harvey, will you come at this time?
With you about a ministry that has an architecture and a design that is so clearly God wrought and created. We at the UCC Mental Health Network administer WISE. As Bishop said, it's an acronym for welcoming, inclusive, supportive, and engaged around issues of mental health. We are a ministry that seeks justice, awareness, and advocacy for those with mental health experiences ranging from diagnoses to just felt events, whether situational or chronic. And I say that we are clearly divinely created. because I don't see how else you can be, for example, an anonymous person running maybe an anxiety group somewhere in a remote area in a small church, some part of the country, and be sought after as a vital link to a national work that must have your voice and heart to make it dynamic and alive. We connect you to churches, nonprofits, and other ministries that are saving lives. Together, we join in solidarity with those who hope for an extravagant embrace of the neuro, emotional, and cognitive side of our sacred nature. Anything true and pure always comes first as a story, and so it is so much with W.I.S.E. I'm going to tell you two stories. One is very personal, and the other is much broader, but both are about tragedy that takes people to the limit of what they can endure and beyond. Then, through God, we not only find a way back again, but do so in a busting through, shatteringly beautiful way that multiplies hope and love and help 1,000,000 times over for thousands upon thousands of people. And our W.I.S.E. ministry sits right in the middle of it. First, my story. I was a practicing psychologist for 35 years. I retired from private practice just over a year ago. It was extremely meaningful work, being a partner in helping a person, couple, or family travel through crippling mental health events and begin once more to thrive. But change happens in a very small world in therapy. It's very private, as it should be, and it often takes place without the wider support of the community. And while there are therapists who incorporate spirituality into their treatment, the vast majority do not utilize faith-based elements, even though we now have scientific evidence that our brain awakens to the spiritual. And it's a critical component to coping with a host of mental health issues, such as depression, anxiety, and many, many more. And of course, many people never go to therapy, but are trapped in a loneliness that they perceive will never end, or a drug dependency, or a chronic and debilitating diagnosis. In my own immediate family, we were shattered by a suicide in 2017. It was my beautiful daughter who had been abused at age 2 and whom we adopted at age 4. We were a family for 18 years. There was always a brokenness she struggled mightily to overcome, and that she struggled to shield us from and to not take us down with her. Her brave attempts to find her way in a world that could not fathom her mental reality will always be the highest example of courage that I will ever witness. I wonder what difference would have been made, what difference it would have made if she were immersed in a community that discussed the realities of our mental health as easily as we discuss the budget or the children's Christmas pageant. If she could have grown up seeing people every week unafraid to speak about their own anxieties and struggles, and to be openly loved and included in that. At the very least, she would have been shoulder to shoulder with people who sometimes also wonder how to go on, and to see all the ways that people do, and all the help and care that can surround someone in deep mental pain. I won't know that for Erica, but it has been life-saving for me to work with a dynamic mental health board and all the 64 churches and synagogues and nonprofits across the nation who are determined that they will speak out, reach out, educate, and embrace anyone in a similar situation. Now, for over 4 years, my husband and I are parents to 2 brothers, now ages 16 and 10. They go to the same church Erica did. They know all the same people and new ones. But oh, what a difference in their experience. They see a pastor and a congregation living out a wise journey, which means they see how people are feeling at their toughest points, as well as all the joy of knowing folks who let others get close when they need help. My 16-year-old joins me at W.I.S.E conferences. I hear he does pretty well at manning the table. And we have a group of high schoolers that are part of our nation's national campaign against online bullying and addictions and predation of young people, which you're going to hear a little bit more about. And this was also part of Erica's struggle. These young people in my little church are leaders, adding their voice and heart to their generation that is in desperate need. This is the redemption that came from my shattered world. My pastor at the time of Erica's passing, who lovingly shepherded us and our congregation through that which cannot be endured, suggested I might find meaning and purpose in working for the Mental Health Network. I applied, and Reverend Alan Johnson, the founder of W.I.S.E, interviewed me, and I've been volunteering with this incredible ministry ever since. Alan and W.I.S.E have nearly a parallel story to mine. Here is story number 2. The catalyst for W.I.S.E was a profoundly sad event in which 2 adult children of a couple in Alan's church ended their lives a year apart from one another. This brought this church to their knees, as it did mine. They began asking, what can they do? They checked in and realized that there were many people in their midst dealing with mental health events and diagnoses. A task force was formed, and over 16 months, they developed a wide variety of programs, partnerships, and activities related to mental health support and awareness. They became A2A in 2010, which is accessible to all. Their team developed the acronym W.I.S.E. They presented a resolution at the UCC Synod in 2015, and it passed. Meanwhile, in 1987, Nanette Roberts of the UCC Board for Homeland Ministry found funding for the UCC to participate in Pathways to Promise, an ecumenical network that promotes support for mental health concerns. In 1992, the UCC Mental Illness Network was formed with a grant from the American Missionary Association. I won't take time to detail the names and events during these years that brought our network to the place it is, but it's a fascinating history with tireless work by many dedicated people. It was in 2009 when Reverend Alan Johnson became the chair of the Mental Illness Network, and then W.I.S.E was joined to the MIN. 3 national Widening the Welcome conferences followed that brought exposure and interest to this vital matter. In 2013, the Mental Illness Network became the Mental Health Network and began monthly conference meetings that continue to this day. It's beyond the scope of this talk to speak of the initiatives, resources, and national leadership that has ensued since then. But again, it is on a God-ordained magnitude. But again, excuse me, I was hoping I could get through this without my cold rearing up. Again, nothing matters in the end but the sacredness of the individual soul and that soul's story. During our last synod in Indianapolis, at the conclusion of our W.I.S.E team's workshop, I was approached by a vulnerable-looking young woman. She seemed near tears and was hesitant to speak. I smiled encouragingly. She thanked me for my story about Erica and said she feels close to her and would carry her with her. She then said that her closest friend had just taken her life. She was trans and her family was not accepting. She said she felt so hopeless and sad. Every day has been so hard to get through dealing with both this terrible loss and a world that seems so cruel and uncaring. And all my alarm bells were going off as I wondered if she were thinking of joining her friend. Then she said, hearing about this ministry gave her for the first time something to hang on to. It had so much life and hope in it and seemed so practical. She thought her church would really like it. She would like to start this in memory of her friend. She said she needed something like this to sink her energies into and was very grateful. And I could tell by the time we finished speaking that she had what she needed to move forward. So this is one of the many radiating stories that emanate from this work. This is what God has wrought out of that long ago double suicide tragedy in Colorado. I'll close this section because we have some great panelists coming up. With a line from our website, we will be soon including new inclusive language changes, which we're very excited about. Thank you for joining us as we pursue our mandate to create safety, sanctuary, and justice for all who come to us in their mental health journeys. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki, for that beautiful history and for sharing your story. My name is Debbie Ringen. I am the Minister of Health and Wellness for the Southern New England Conference and also a parish nurse at my church and a faith community nurse is the title we go by now. I serve the W.I.S.E board as a W.I.S.E liaison, or the Mental Health Network board, sorry, as a W.I.S.E liaison. And I'm thrilled to be speaking with so many churches that are pursuing this same path. The Southern New England Conference and my home church of the First Church of Christ in Saybrook will both be voting to become WISE in June, and we are hopeful and confident that that will pass. Currently, there are 64 faith communities that are certified WISE, including a Presbyterian church and 3 synagogues. There are 5 UCC conferences, 2 UCC associations, the National Ministry of the Disaster Ministry, and we are expanding into nonprofits that are faith-based. And we have one, United Church Homes, that is actively pursuing WISE. And if I may stop for a minute, I'm just seeing Vicki's screen on the side here. Are you all seeing me?
Yes, we see you, Deborah.
Okay, the camera's on. I'm not seeing my picture on the side of the screen. I just wanted to make sure everything was going okay.
Yes.
So,
yep.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So while we're hopefully working on getting the next slide to show, the Southern New England Conference, if you're not aware, covers Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. There are almost 600 congregations that are divided into 6 regions and 25 associations. As a faith community nurse for more than the last 20 years, I have been engaged with promoting Mental Health Sundays and WISE resources in many different roles. That's the right one now. Thank you. So I approached our executive director, Darrell Goodwin, with a proposal to begin the WISE journey to certification in June of 2022. The journey then began following the 10 steps to become WISE. We started recruiting a task force to lead the journey with the intention of including representation from each state in the conference and staff, as well as people with various backgrounds. We found it was difficult to have staff attending due to scheduling. However, several came in and out during our meetings and provided feedback related to the emails that were sent out as we went through the process. We had a team of 5 or 6 people initially, and as it's been almost 2 years now, we had some new members join and some of the early members resigned. But those that stayed are a faithful and dedicated, passionate team. As the pandemic settled down, I attended the WISE conference in Pennsylvania in October of 2022 and was further inspired. So our task force, as we called our WISE team, initially began meeting in November of 2022. We wrote a agreement for our meetings in terms of confidentiality, and we had a lot of really good brainstorming. Ideas surfaced, such as improving accessibility to mental health care for underserved populations, identifying gateways and pathways with capacity, compassion, and dignity to advocate for mental health. We thought about church buildings being used as resources for the mission of improving mental health, affordable mental health services, and perhaps our buildings could be known as places of services for health and well-being. We also thought about how churches might repent how our theology has been used in some places to marginalize those with mental illness and add to the stigma. We recognize that all people have value for who they are and not what they do, and wanted to work to reduce stress and pressure, which could be oppressive. So we completed the initial survey then with the Mental Health Network and were assigned a liaison. And we met to discuss how becoming a WISE conference might be different than becoming a WISE congregation. And we really felt that our role was to provide education and resources to promote WISE in congregations, as well as within our staff structure, and to make sure that we also address mental health concerns amongst the staff. So we finally came to some initial goals. You can go to the next slide, please. In January of 2023, we really wanted to normalize the conversation about mental illness and mental health to reduce stigma. We wanted to develop a local support team to assist congregations in becoming WISE, and initiate a process to identify WISE congregations who were certified or on the journey that were affiliated with the conference, as well as people that were interested in the topic and thinking about pursuing WISE. We wanted to include the area conference ministers, as they have a lot of connection with the individual congregations. And I'll tell you, it was just the following month that I learned, by being vulnerable with others and talking about the death by suicide of my eldest son, that others came forward with their stories and experiences to connect and be supportive or to seek support. And this happened both on the conference level and in my own congregation. People felt now it was okay to talk about such things in a faith-based setting. Next slide. So you see a couple of photographs here. Our education took many forms. I wrote, I don't know how many blogs and reflections, and recruited some others to write about their journey becoming WISE. First Church in Southington has a couple of their WISE team members who also joined our conference team, who wrote for us and really helped us to spread the word. We had webinars such as What is WISE? Becoming Wise, Breaking the Silence about mental illness in our churches and communities with Reverend Dr. Sarah Lund, who was also gracious enough to come back and do another, well, these were virtual, but to come do a second webinar on her book, Blessed Youth, Breaking the Silence about mental health with children and teens. We offered QPR suicide prevention training, topics, other webinar topics such as how do we care for the caregivers and care for people with dementia. We collaborated with our ONA ministry on a program called Walk a Mile in My Shoes, Health and Wellness for Transgender and Non-Binary People. And we promoted national UCC mental health programs. We attended events such as the annual meeting and the Justice Summit and Super Saturday events with tables just as you see here, bringing information about health and wellness and about WISE and how to join the program. We developed a web page called, it's just called Being Wise right now, but it will be Becoming Wise. And we also developed a page of mental health and suicide prevention resources. And I just put both of those links in the chat for you. Our Center for Transformational Leadership performed a survey of the clergy, and they titled it, How Are You Being? A Clergy Well-Being Survey. So not all of the events in the conference actually came through the WISE team. Staff were getting busy with the work as well. And then another video, we do have a video of Sarah Lund's Becoming Wise, Breaking the Silence, and I'll give you that link in a moment. We also had, you can go to the next slide, please. There's the web page. That's just a little bit of it. We wanted to list the churches as well as further down, you can connect to other resources, and it talks about what being wise is. Next slide. So here are just the video screens. These are both available on videos at Southern New England Conference, and you can just Google the title. The video, The Secret Hat, A Personal Story of Faith and Bipolar Disorder, is a testimony from Steve Palmieri that he gave when his church was to vote on becoming wise. His words are compelling. It's about 15 minutes long, and I would recommend anyone thinking about the WISE program listen to that. And Steve is with us today, and we are so grateful that he's willing to share this and that he has been sharing his video broadly as well. People always come to talk after they see it. Next slide. So then we wrote our covenant, we wrote a draft, we emailed it to all the clergy in the conference and requested feedback by email. We had about 20 people respond. One of the major responses was that we had the word challenge in a lot of our work, and people were not that comfortable with that word, and some were actually offended by the use of a mental health challenge. And I brought that to the Mental Health Network, and the board's been talking about it greatly. As Vicki said, new language will be coming to the website soon. So after we gathered that feedback, we held 3 listening sessions conference-wide to also give people the opportunity to come and speak with us directly, virtually, which they did. And then we went and proposed the covenant to our board of directors. We gave them a little bit of background about why we were doing this and some of the efforts that we had undergone. Dan Gabri shared the story of First Church of Christ in Southington, Connecticut, becoming wise, and the board of directors approved it in principle, which means that they will be bringing it to vote at our annual meeting, June 21st and 22nd. For that purpose, our covenant had to be revised into a resolution, and we worked closely with the business committee to do that and held a hearing, which was needed to educate any delegates who were interested in learning more about what the resolution was for. And at that hearing meeting, those attending reached a consensus that it should be approved. So we also, during that same time, we went out to 3 of our 6 associations invited us to come and talk with them. And these were very engaging conversations about what is WISE, how might they get together, and how might they pursue the WISE process. People are interested. Ever since I started talking about this in the conference, it is the topic of health and wellness that has engaged the most people. It is the blogs that I received email responses about. It is the type of programming that people are showing up for. So I really believe the time is now for folks to start the WISE journey, see if your congregation is interested. And next slide, I believe we're turning it over to Abby now. That's just, yes, our delegates will vote. And we can trust that nothing will separate us from God's love.
Hello, all. My name's Abby Chronister, and I'm coming to you from Iowa. So, transitioning slightly into some other aspects of the Mental Health Network. Our work doesn't just end at the local settings or the associations or the conferences of the UCC and similar denominations and communities of faith, but expand into spirituality in the broader sense and even into more secular spaces as well. Back in early 2023, the Center for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships, a division of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, alongside Columbia University's Spirituality Mind-Body Institute, invited our very own Reverend Dr. Sarah Lund and a team of people to participate in a training on faith-based mental health and wellness and youth pilot certification program. The current slide includes the logos for both the Partnership Center and the Spirituality Mind-Body Institute. Throughout 6 weeks of virtual gatherings, we listened to a variety of people, including the Spirituality Mind-Body Institute's own founder, Dr. Lisa Miller, who's also the author of The Awakened Brain, The New Science of Spirituality and Our Quest for an Inspired Life. And we listened to these people discuss how faith-based interventions in response to trauma, suffering, inequities, injustices, racial disparities, depression, suicidal ideation, and more are essential to caring for our youth and beyond. Representatives from programs including Spiritual First Aid, Walter Earl Fluker and Associates, Haven Connect, Haven being an acronym for Helping to Alleviate Valley Experiences Now, of New York. They all coach us on what works and showcase their experiences working at this intersection of youth and mental health care and spirituality / the spiritual core. And it was through this training that we were invited to apply for a seed grant through Columbia's Spirituality Mind-Body Institute. If you want to head to the next slide, the image on this slide displays a word cloud in the shape of a cloud, of course, with words such as a spiritual core, mental health, science, digital world, youth, leadership, and justice are highlighted. Research shows that the addictive and persuasive properties of digital consumption, particularly its social and gaming aspects, can be highly detrimental to our nation's youth and that it consumes a vast majority of their physical time and mental territory. Digital bullying, shaming, ghosting, racist and homophobic verbal and visual attacks, the exclusivity of digital socializing compared to in person, and the absorption of violent content are highly correlated with suicide, depression, acting out, lowered self-esteem, anxiety, and reduction in corrective social support and feedback. Social media is commonly cited by the general public as a major reason for poor mental health. Much research points to the complexities of how life on the internet positively and negatively impacts humans, particularly in youth and young adults. On the positive spectrum, a 2023 advisory from the Office of the U.S. U.S. Surgeon General titled Social Media and Youth Mental Health says that, quote, the buffering effects against stress that online social support from peers may provide can be especially important for youth who are often marginalized, including racial, ethnic, sexual, and gender minorities, end quote. However, this advisory also touches on many more well-known negative effects, cyberbullying, related issues with sleep, lower self-esteem, etc., as well as the issue of higher risk of exposure to harmful content, which can be spread through direct pushes, unwanted content exchanges, and algorithmic designs. It is subsequently reported that 64% of adolescents are often or sometimes exposed to hate-based content. While, as aforementioned, there are some positive factors of digital media use in youth and young adults, the large number of negative factors appears to outweigh the potential benefits. However, digital interactions are actually shown to only amplify an adolescent's existing mental state, causing some young people to feel more distress and others to experience enhanced feelings of connections. Additionally, a survey from the Making Caring Common project found that some of the top sources of lack of mental well-being in young adults includes a lack of meaning, purpose, and direction, financial worries and achievement pressure, a perception that the world is unraveling, relationship deficits, and social and political issues. So with this research in mind, our proposal for this grant was one that sought to expand upon our W.I.S.E certification process and create a program that would train youth advocates to conduct peer-to-peer mentoring regarding the potential for harmful digital consumption and anti-belonging and spiritual alternatives to this engagement. Alongside the partnership with the UCC and the Mental Health Network, we also sought to involve two of our W.I.S.E churches, Covina Community Church and Diamond Bar UCC, as well as Chapman University's Fish Interfaith Center, all of which exist in the greater Los Angeles area. In May of 2023, we were approved for a $10,000 grant in order to make our proposal a reality. On to the next slide, please. As a part of our preparation to launch this program, our team gathered in Orange, California earlier this year to have some intensive time together to nail down more specifics of the project. One purpose in particular was that we wanted to use this opportunity to better understand the needs of youth and young adults, and what better source than the youth and young adults themselves. So alongside Pastor Lee of Covina Community Church, we met with the young people of Diamond Bar UCC and students involved with the Fish Interfaith Center at Chapman University. On this next slide, there on the right is an image of our team and the Diamond Bar youth, all seated around a dinner table and smiling, ready to eat some wonderful lasagna. And on the left is an action shot of our team meeting with the Chapman students, with all of us around a large table enjoying our discussion, and again, yummy food. In these conversations, the youth overall made it known that the online world is an incredibly powerful tool and a place where everyone can connect. One student articulated that the internet and digital realm is all about relationships and connections, and that's a big part of spirituality. Another stated that in terms of the dangers of technology, if you always rely on technology to make some escape from reality, you never learn how to properly figure out how to cope with your own emotions. We also heard that one of the large barriers between them and finding community within the walls of a church has been because they've been hurt by the church in various ways, be it their sexual and/or gender identities, critique on their lack of participation, extreme levels of high-pressure environments and activities. It was also brought to our attention that the words religion and even spirituality tend to come along with uncomfortable connotations for reasons such as the aforementioned. However, the term mindfulness, often thought about in a sense akin to the idea of meditation, is held in a more approachable regard. This idea is backed by academic literature such as that of Dr. Miguel Farias of Coventry University in the UK, as well as Dr. Sarah Ramani of University of Wellington in New Zealand, and they additionally postulate that youth desiring to be countercultural were, quote, unapologetically drawn to the more mystical, spiritual, and individualistic elements of the practice, end quote. Further delving into this idea revealed the work of Dr. Kelly Rab Mayo of St. Lawrence University in New York, who describes in her book, Creativity, Spirituality, and Mental Health, Exploring Connections, the benefits of theologies of hope and practical ways of fostering this through creativity in the arts. Rab explicitly addresses the long-standing debate of the terms religion versus spirituality, as well as gives distinct theological rhetoric that analyzes not just Christian values and texts, but those of Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism. Rab also discusses how the concept of hope is embedded into religious narratives, and that spiritual and religious leaders must wield their power in a way that promotes, rather than negates, the hopeful aspects of one's sacred practices, especially towards those who experience mental health challenges. Next slide, please. After doing our needs assessment that involved meeting with youth and young adults and reading up on different articles in journals that discuss this intricate interaction between youth and young adults and spirituality and mental health and well-being, we were able to form a more concrete structure for what the peer-led program we are developing looks like. So the image on the slide shows a paper cutout of a human head, and then there's scattered flowers erupting from their mind. And on the other side of the slide is our vision. And we desire to wrestle with pertinent issues as we explore the relationship between spirituality, science, mental health, justice, and the digital world. Invest in the leadership development of youth and young adults as leaders as they discover their own strength and agency to transform the world. Support these leaders as they create safe spaces, heal the hurts of the world, serve as mental health ambassadors, lead from their spiritual core, and live as advocates for digital justice. And in turn, these leaders will empower their peers, inviting them on their own journey of growth and advocacy, adding to the spectrum of diverse voices and experiences, and inspiring the next generation of mental health leaders. To develop this program, part of the grant money is being used to fund 2 interns from Chapman University this summer, who will be helping us develop some branding, outline the peer-led training curriculum, and start curating helpful content for a toolkit, such as videos and infographics. The process itself is incredibly exciting, but we also can't wait to share the finished products with you. And speaking of finished projects, another current endeavor of the Mental Health Network we've been working on is a video series through a Genesis grant titled God at the Intersection, Journeying at the Crossroads of Tolerance. Just this week, we debuted our second video entitled When the Faithful Harm. We have a promotional video to show you, just a glimpse of what this part of the series is all about. So the video, please.
But in many ways, the church, while it was a place of formation and life giving in many aspects, it was a place that I would say caused the greatest hurt in my life.
So when I walked in churches, and mind you, the most aggression I felt was when I was not even practicing being gay.
But sometimes in the context of the United Church of Christ, that tends to be more white. When I have gone to meetings of the annual conference here in Northern California, I've been invisible in those places.
Sometimes being able to sit with the felt experience of God's absence is what actually allows us to be witnesses to the presence of God.
I also learned from some very few old pastors. They say that Christianity should not be so tiny.
And we'll pass it back over to Bishop Allison Abrams.
As you can see, there are many things that impact the mental health of all people. Thank you to all of those who serve on the Mental Health Network and for all the work you are doing to help to reduce stigma. After hearing this entire presentation, being on this journey with us, realizing it's the wise thing to do, prayerfully you have a better understanding of what it will mean to those in your community if you would start the WISE process. Those who think and process differently should be engaged and integrated into the work of the church, the place for all of God's people. I encourage you to be mindful also of the mental health of our youth today. I came to say simply, the world needs your help. And if you won't, who will? There are many struggling with mental health issues today. What better place to provide support and love and compassion than in the place where God's people gather? If you have already completed the initial application and your church or organization is moving forward with establishing your committee and completing your survey, congratulations to you on now moving forward with becoming wise. If you have not, please take a few moments to scan the QR code with the camera on your cell phone. The QR code is on the screen for you. This code directs you to the webpage for WISE, where you could start the process today. Again, on behalf of the entire Mental Health Network Board, thank you for your attendance today. Thank you all for your yes and for realizing that your ministry or service is needed in this season. Now we will give it back to the illustrious Reverend Dr. Sarah Lund.
Thank you so much. We are truly blessed in the United Church of Christ. This movement for mental health justice invites all of us to join. We have time for conversation among our panelists. So panelists, if you'd like to turn on your videos, we have some good questions from people attending the webinar. Patricia asked this question: how can we best convince the average congregant that they can help others who are struggling? I invite you to share your thoughts.
I'll take a stab at that. That's a wonderful question. I like to tell people that they, whatever they are feeling and thinking is being multiplied a million times out. So, if we can approach our people in church and say, you have whatever you are feeling, you can assume that 100 people are feeling it. And if you can become active in this, you will not only find that you are, feeling kindred souls, but you are finding that things that you are struggling with, not only you will find help, but you will be able to help others. That's my first thought.
Can I add also, Reverend Dr. Sarah, that I would suggest that the God in you see the God in them. And once you can see the God in them, then there is hope. And it's not that we're going to put you out here and don't give you any training. Okay, so we will help you to be able to help others. But first, we want you to see the God in them.
Yeah, and Bishop, coming from a nursing background, I would really be starting with the education, or, well, first assessing what's going on in the community, but then the education with programs like the 60 to 90 minute QPR, gatekeeper suicide prevention, or mental health first aid, or getting NAMI in to do some talks, because then people can be given simple lines to say, just to walk alongside someone and one of the NAMI webinars that I watched recently, the woman pointed out that we're not to be the saviors, we're the supporters. And when we take that stress off of people, they're more willing to talk with others.
I can add too that one of the first kind of steps that we suggest for when you're becoming WISE is we have this like congregational organizational survey that you send out to your setting anonymously. And I've heard from settings that it's very helpful because when the responses come in, you see that it's so much more common than one might think, that people are experiencing different symptoms of mental health. And so just knowing that you're already interacting with people that have struggles with mental health related experiences is empowering in that self, in and of itself. So hopefully that kind of boost of I'm already talking to people, like it's not this extraneous thing that I need to go get a degree in or whatever to talk to people. Odds are you're already doing some of the work.
Another question, what is the most important thing to keep in mind when you are beginning the WISE process, welcoming, inclusive, supportive, and engaged for mental health? What would be the most important thing as people get started?
I want to say this from, I guess, a professor standpoint. The most important thing is to get started, okay? Because most people drag their feet, put it off, procrastinate, okay? The most important thing to me is to get started. But I know the wonderful board members are going to tell y'all something else. But for me, get started.
I think that's excellent. And that gives me an opportunity to say, get in touch with us through our website. We have a very clearly marked tab that says how to start the WISE process. And though we've been trying for many years to make this clear, we find that churches do go along without any contact with us. And then they contact us at the end, and they may or may not have done all the steps. So if you can be in touch with us at the very beginning, to stay in touch with us, you'll be assigned a liaison. And that way we know, and we can hopefully be of assistance all the way along. So one of the most important things is be in touch with your national setting.
Another question, what resources are there for congregations with people of color looking to do the work of mental health?
I do believe our intersectionality video addresses, we have a video series. You just saw a preview of our second video, and it will be a 3-video series designed for churches to show to their congregants and have discussion questions, and many issues regarding race are discussed in there with intersectionality and faith and mental health. I think that's a primary resource.
Yes, and I want to say that the people of color is a new area that we're now building resources for. And so in the past, there has not been a whole lot, but I do want to say that we're working to make sure that we do have resources noted on our website, and that we're developing new information currently.
I would offer also some of the lessons learned in the COVID pandemic in terms of how do we get people to accept vaccination who might not trust the healthcare system. And, finding some stakeholders in the community that are trusted by the people in the community can really help to plant the seeds and get things started. without coming in and saying, hey, we're going to do mental health programs.
One of the things too so a part of the cohort pilot program seed grant we went through, there's been a couple other meetings with the first cohort of this group, and when we presented our proposal, they really wanted to challenge us to make sure that we were addressing racial disparities and issues. So we were grateful that people felt comfortable naming that, and so we are working towards also making sure that we're committed to all sorts of justice.
Thank you so much. Our time is coming to a close here, but our work has really just begun. And so if you are new to the UCC Mental Health Network, welcome. We need your help. We desire to be partners with you wherever you are and whoever you are on life's journey. We believe God calls us into this sacred work together. As you heard from our leaders today, the Mental Health Network and the UCC are committed to creating safe, beloved communities that are sanctuaries that do the work of mental health justice together at the intersection of gender, sexuality, race, culture, age, spirituality, rural, urban, no matter who you are, we all have mental health. Mental health is health. And as you heard from our speakers, this movement to be welcoming, inclusive, supportive, engaged, it's about our own stories. It's about breaking the silence to end the stigma and shame so that together we can offer hope and healing. We can't do this without you and without God's love. And so know that you are invited into this sacred work. Thank you so much to our incredible leaders. We are so blessed in the United Church of Christ. May God continue to give you the energy and the courage to do this work. And for us, we invite you to come back to our next Nurture the Soul. We'll look at love of children. It's a 3-part series. You will hear more about how the landscape of children's and youth ministry has been quickly changing over the last decade, and how these changes were accelerated with the pandemic and other social justice issues. As a result, like me, probably a lot of you are asking the question of how do we engage now in effective ministry with young people? And so this webinar series is an opportunity for us to learn more about today's culture with youth, how to support them in faith formation, as well as share practical skills to equip leaders to walk alongside our youth. Thank you again to our panelists from the UCC Mental Health Network. Thank you so much for your partnership, and to all of you in the United Church of Christ and beyond, as we come together to build a more just world for all. You are not alone, and you are loved. God bless you all.
Siblings in Christ, if you are moved by this conversation, if what's been offered here has helped enhance your ministry or has nurtured your soul for the journey, please consider donating to the annual fund of the United Church of Christ by texting UCC to 41444. Your support will help to provide programs like this, which are an essential part of our ministries in the United Church of Christ. Thank you for your support. Be blessed on your journey and know that you are not alone. We are holding you in prayer. Amen.